shouldn't have to get real nervous when that little lady reminds us, oh, you're being recorded now. So is it Optizmo or Optizmo?
Excellent question. It is Optizmo.
What I'll do is I'll just say, hey, everybody, it's Rob Seaver, Leads Counsel, blah, blah, blah. I'm introducing Tom Wozniak, right?
Yep.
Wozniak. Boy, that sounds like a damn football player name.
If you want. I realize
That's up to you, dude. That's up to you. Mine says you're pointless.
You're pointless. Which I actually, that's excellent. God damn, I love that. As opposed to, hey, why were you not wearing the Optizmo t-shirt, Mr. Marketing Guy?
Wait a second. People are going to watch this. I need to get a beer real quickly. Hey everybody, it's Rob Seaver, Executive Director with Leads Counsel. I'm here with our next on-air podcast. Super excited today because we're bringing you a little bit of a different spin. I'm here with Tom Wozniak. He's with Optizmo. He's the Executive Director of Marketing, and I had a call with this guy the other day and it just blew me away. I had to bring him on to one of these. I wanted you guys to meet him. I wanted you to understand a little bit more about what they're doing at Optizmo. And so, Tom, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate the time. It's super busy times for a lot of people, so freeing this up for me is great. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, Rob. My pleasure. And like I said, I really enjoyed our conversation last week, so I'm looking forward to reconnecting here.
Well, we've got a lot of room to cover here, and I wanted to start. I back up. I've started doing this now just to give everybody a little bit of understanding about who's going to be on with them and what they're all about. And so, did a little research on you, and you went to Drake University. I'm going to read this because I tried to memorize it, didn't work for me. But you went to Drake University. It says you have a bachelor's in journalism and mass communications, and then you went on to Northeastern Illinois University and got your master's in, what was that? I didn't have the note there. What was it?
It's actually it's in English, and with a focus on English and American literature.
So for sure you're smarter than me. I've got that down already. I can't compete with that. So as I went back and looked at the things that you've done, I think we mentioned this earlier on in the call before we hit record, and we found that we're very similar in age. Graduated high school around the same time, different paths. I went the Navy, you went to get smart. And but when we came back and went back into our career or started our career, it looks as if we really kind of had the same path where you went straight into marketing, offline, direct marketing stuff. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that, because that's my DNA. I owned a print shop and a mail shop in the past, doing stuff for magazines, books, publications, and stuff. So looked like we had a lot of overlap there. What did you do?
Yeah, no, that's funny, and it does, I think, speak to our I won't say age, I'll just call it our level of experience in the industry. Yeah, I like to say, honestly, it doesn't show on my LinkedIn or resume, but I got started in direct mail when I was probably 10 years old because my dad owned a direct marketing agency. And so as soon as I was old enough to lick a stamp or seal an envelope, I was put to work at very minimum wage at best. I think I was, getting paid with food. They were putting, a roof over my head and give me a bed to sleep in. But so I sort of naturally grew up in this direct marketing and back then direct mail space. And so I obviously worked there all the way through high school and summers through college. And right after college, went back to that company as I was getting my feet under me, trying to decide what the heck it is I was going to do with a career. And it wasn't really with any particular plan initially, like most people, that I ended up continuing in marketing. It was just a natural extension of what I'd been doing. And then with the college, as you said, really things that technically don't apply to what I do, but it was all about writing and, and becoming a stronger communicator. And so that did dovetail perfectly into marketing, and just sort of found that was the natural fit for me. And while I've also spent time, doing sales on a pure kind of biz dev standpoint and doing account management and owning client relationships, marketing has always been a huge piece of it, and it's really always been where I've come back to. So it's certainly when I think of who I am as a from a career marketer, communicator, storyteller, that sort of is pretty descriptive for me.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is it looked like you sprinkled a little bit of database management into that. Obviously, at the mail side, you know, database management, I don't think people understand how much that was OG stuff. Like we were handling mass databases and processing them any way we could. So I think that, you know, in today's world of marketing, having that mix of, you know, early communication, creativity that was just naturally marketing associated, but then throwing in that database management, it really positions you well in today's age of marketing. I would suspect. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it for me, it just spoke to kind of the way my brain works, which is definitely a little bit of that left brain, right brain, you know, where
Yeah.
I love the creative side. You know, I write a ton. Spend some time on the photography side and in some of that area from a marketing standpoint. But I also really like the analytics. You know, I like looking at the numbers and how things perform. So, you know, the more performance focused marketing arenas were just natural for me because it was the marriage of those two things where, yeah, you got to work on your messaging and you want to engage with your audience, but you want to measure that engagement, and inevitably you want that to drive something like revenue. And so being able to look at those numbers, that just married those two sides of my brain that I really, you know, that work well together, and they'll work for everybody that way. And everybody likes both sides of that. But that's, I think, what, you know, drove me toward marketing initially, and certainly has kept me there for years and years.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. I mean, I've talked to several people. I mean, I was on with Infutor, and they handle mass data right now themselves. But the modern CMO, the modern chief marketing officer, they've got to have almost maybe more left brain than right brain. And so I certainly appreciate that path. I feel like we're on very parallel journeys, with the exception of somewhere along the way, I don't know where it happened, but you turned into a real estate agent. What's going on there?
Yeah, you know, a lot of my career, you know, I've been at a handful of startups. You know, I got into the .com space really back in about 1999. I think was my first sort of at least mostly .com company, and that became very volatile. Not surprisingly, in the, you know, the late 90s, early 2000s. You know, we had the .com crash, and I was certainly a big part of that. Watched a big company of, you know, 400 some people kind of go right out from under me over the span of, you know, 6 months, and decided in that time period where I was, you know, figuring what am I going to do next. You know, real estate looked interesting to me from an investment standpoint, if nothing else, and it became one of those endeavors that I decided to get my license and have it as, I won't say a side hustle because I don't think that term existed back then, but as another potential revenue stream for me, and maybe something I would go into full time down the road. It's still there. My wife happens to be a full time realtor, so we actually met in our first sort of office meeting with the real estate brokerage that we were working with at the time. We sat next to each other at that first meeting, and while she stayed in it full time, I, not probably surprisingly, drifted back into the .com space and found another startup to get involved with, and went back into marketing. So there's, to some extent, the joke that I do tend to tell people is, while I myself have never really completed a deal in real estate, the one deal that I sort of completed was, you know, closing the deal with my wife. So I can't complain.
Ultimate deal, right?
If that's all I get out of it, it was well worth it. But I still have my license today, mainly so I can be my wife's assistant when she needs me to help with a contract or something. So I'm, you know, legally capable of doing that in the state of Colorado.
So that's the biggest title right now, is your assistant to your wife. That's awesome.
That's always my biggest title.
I will have to say that before I get into Optizmo and email marketing, there was one other little tidbit that dug up, and that's that you have a degree in bartending as well. Is that
You know,
correct?
I'm gonna joke about that too, because that, you know, when I got my real estate license, it just popped into my head. I was like, and the even funnier thing that I got in one of those times was I went to bartending college, and this was actually right after that .com that disappeared in 2001, and you know, basically all my friends and I, we were all laid off. You know, we were all spending a lot of time skiing and mountain biking, which was fantastic. But we were also, you know, like, hey, what are we going to do if, you know, this economy doesn't come back? And I was like, you know, I do spend a lot of time in bars. What if I could get paid for that time I was there? So I went to a local bartending college and yes, did complete the degree program. And actually, here, just because it'll be funny, I have it. That degree is actually sitting on a shelf. I don't have my master's degree.
Certified,
I don't have any
certified.
others. I know. That is the one diploma that I've actually hung on the wall in my home office because I think it's such a riot. So
So
yes,
like if this whole Optizmo thing just doesn't work out, doesn't pan out, we've got a backup plan.
yeah, totally set.
I will tell you that in this community of lead generation, that is a degree that probably matters the most. So I will say, I'm super excited to know that, we're friends now and that you will mix us a mean drink at some point
Absolutely,
in time.
that's right.
Well, so now that we've kind of journeyed you through, where you come from and what your background is, and I know, look, I looked, you got it, you were in affiliate marketing, man. We'll get into that here in a second because I think that there's some things that I want to dig into as we talk about that. But at the end of the day, I do believe when I look back at the path of, direct marketing, that mailing, the database management, the offline world at the time, because literally that world did not have online or email when we first started off on this thing. But we had to make that pivot at some point, right? And so I would imagine that that was the natural progression to email for you. Is that correct? I mean, I'm just guessing.
Yeah, it really was. And I think it's funny you bring it up because I'm writing an article that touches on this subject, like right now. I was working on it this morning. That I think email played such a huge part in the building the foundations of digital marketing because it was understandable to folks who had a background in offline because it was electronic mail. It was basically direct mail, but it was on a computer screen. And that's a lot easier for somebody to grasp who their full background is offline than display or search, which now is a much more detailed and nuanced kind of topic for a marketer who doesn't have a background in the online space. So back then, email was clearly, it's like, well, this just makes sense. This is direct marketing moved to this new digital frontier and really works the same way. But you have even more analytics. You've got even, it has all these advantages over direct mail. The first that always comes to mind is just the immediacy of it, where you back in the day, you write your sales letter, come up with a brochure or whatever, you would get it printed, put it in an envelope, put some postage on it, put it in the mail, and wait. And like, okay, it's like the catalog's out. Is anybody, we're gonna get any response?
Oh my God, you really are old. Sales letter, what is that?
I know, ridiculous, right? But that's, old school, that's how it was. And now, okay, you can crank out an email, if you want to, in minutes and send it to a list and you get immediate feedback. And maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, but you learn quickly and you can pivot and, iterate on that and optimize going forward. And so for a marketer that likes to focus again on, the analytics side and the performance side, wow, what a dramatic improvement, that was for how we go about our business. So that was a natural fit, I think, for me. And it's just something that I took to because it made sense to what I did back in the olden days, in the offline world, and easily, I think, took the skill set, that we built back then in offline marketing and made it very relevant in a digital space.
Olden days.
I know that's, yeah.
I thought you would try to say golden days, but you just you went ahead and just
get away with that.
The truth.
Yeah, because we're both of the same age, we can, we just own it. It's fine.
It's the only reason I feel comfortable making the old jokes is I think I'm also self-deprecating, at the same time. So, well, look, so I'm taking you through this journey. I remember that time. I mean, like it was the back of my hands. I mean, that was actually right at the time people were spinning up America Online CDs. Remember that at the time? And just the world was so crazy, but it was so simple. It was much more simple. I mean, we probably at the time felt it wasn't, but I mean, when we now look at where we are today, and that was also pre-can spam days as well. So, it was certainly wild, wild west as it relates to email marketing. So I'm skipping over a lot of your career as I looked at the journey that you've taken, and I want to fast forward finally to Optizmo. And you and I were talking about this company before we started the call, and you're still waiting to find out one critical answer that I asked, like, why Optizmo? Where did it come from? But we'll probably find that answer, and I may put it in the notes after we publish. But it was an interesting name when I first heard it. I'm really excited to hear more about what Optizmo does. But at the core, you guys focus on one big thing, right? Tell me what Optizmo is, what drew you to it, how does it work today, and why is it different than any of the others?
Sure, no, great question. And yes, I will come back to the name, which how I joined the company, and obviously, been here now about 3 years, and it's obviously a created name by our two founders. And for some reason, I've never asked them where they came up with it. But we'll assume that optimization is a big part of it, and I think they were having some fun with words. But I will ask Chris, our CEO, after this call, and let you know what the official story is.
I was hoping for some like ancient Greeks used to tablet, and
exactly right. But in a nutshell, what Optizmo is we're focused in the compliance space, and historically that has been email, and more recently it also includes SMS. But our value proposition is that we provide a technology platform that allows our clients to really effectively manage both their email and SMS compliance programs with a specific focus on suppression list management. So it is everything from, in the email space particularly, managing the entire opt-out process, collecting opt-outs, storing them, processing them, and then making those files distributable to third-party partners who might be working with an advertiser on their email programs. So our sweet spot is often, and you alluded to affiliate marketing, our sweet spot is really in the affiliate marketing space, where a brand is leveraging third parties to market on their behalf. And if they want to get into that space, which can be, fantastically effective from a marketing standpoint to acquiring new customers, with just a great ROI and cost per acquisition, they're going to face a problem with maintaining compliance with CAN-SPAM, as you mentioned. And without going into the great detail of any particular law, but CAN-SPAM being one that we're email marketers should be at least relatively familiar with. One of the basic tenets of it is that you have to give people a way to opt out, and when they do, you got to honor it. And in the affiliate space, when you're using partners to market on your behalf, those opt-outs extend. And so if somebody opts out from receiving that brand's communications about a particular offer, the affiliates can't mail that offer to members of their audience who also happen to be on that opt-out list. And similarly, once you built your affiliate program, if somebody opts out from affiliate number 1, then affiliate number 100 also can't email to that person. So it creates a bit of a logistical challenge for companies that want to build out an extensive program with a lot of partners. Again, if it's 1 or 2, that's one thing, but you get to 100 affiliates, distributing that list and making sure everybody is honoring all of those opt-outs and doing it really in real time is not something that anybody should want to take on. And it brings on a lot of risk if you do it yourself. So our platform automates that entire process, really makes it simple. And while, again, sort of our core is really that focus on compliance and being in line with CAN-SPAM and those guidelines, a lot of our clients use it for more strategic purposes, where, for example, if you have an affiliate program and you really want your affiliates focusing on just net new clients for you, you don't want them talking to your current clients because you've already got relationships with them. Well, one way to do that is to make sure that all of your marketing partners are suppressing all of your current clients. And to do that, you upload a list of those folks into our database. You get your mailers to scrub against that file, and now you've got them focused only on net new. And there's lots of other strategic ways you can use suppression files to really dial in your audience targeting and the audience targeting of your partners. So our platform just provides a very user-friendly and yet exceedingly powerful way to do that in the space. And as far as how we stand out, there are only a few companies that do what we do, and certainly our without getting too salesy, because I don't want to do that necessarily, but our technology is top notch, but we got a heck of a team. And I say that being part of the team, obviously, but I'll talk about everybody else, because how I came to Optizmo is I got introduced to the CEO over Facebook, actually, by just a mutual friend. Oddly, they had been in the affiliate space for 10 years. I'd been in, for about the same amount of time, but somehow our paths had never crossed, despite, a lot of email background. And again, a mutual friend of ours, Matt Frary at Smarter Chaos, he knew that Optizmo was looking for a new head of marketing. I had happened to just be in contact with him and said I was interested in kind of figuring out what my next adventure was going to be. And he connected the CEO and I over Facebook. We spent about a month or maybe even 2 months just kind of chatting and getting to know each other. And finally, actually, decided over a phone call, I'd met everybody on the team, over GoToMeeting or, over the phone. And Chris just said, he's like, I know we haven't actually met in person, but what do you say we just give this a try? Do you want to join the team? And, it was sort of I don't want to say it was like, what do we got to lose? But it was like, I think we've got a good fit here. We really seem to get along great. Why hesitate? Why wait? And I thought, why not? Let's do it and see how it goes. What's the worst that can happen? And fortunately, it's really been the best that can happen, because, I knew I enjoyed everybody that I met over the phone and on conference calls, and God, meeting everybody in person, it is the best team that I have ever worked with. I will sing the praises of this company, especially from that standpoint, like all day long, that it really is a family atmosphere where everybody's kind of rowing in the same direction. We don't have any politics. We just have a bunch of really smart, passionate people who want to help our clients do well, and I think that goes right into the success of the company over 10 plus years now that we've been around and really the leaders in our relatively niche space in the industry.
I think when you talk to anybody, when they're talking about why they want to do work with a company or why they like that company, I rarely hear somebody say best tech or best product or best service. People always come first. I hear that routinely, and I think that's a testament to what you're trying to say there. At least I hope that's what I'm hearing. But
Yeah,
I've met a couple of people from your place and from Optizmo, and I felt the same feeling. So I can certainly empathize with where you're coming from and why it's so important to you to talk so highly about it. I want to go back a little bit because we're the council. We're about compliance and regulation and setting best practices. And what's interesting is a lot of times we tend to forget about email and canned spam just because it's just been around forever. And I think that's just old hat to people, and it's just kind of like a expected thing. And so there's no appeal to it. So why spend time with it? But having said all that, especially in today's times, I talk to a lot of people and I look at the channels that are winning for them, and email it always makes its way into the conversation. Now, if I'm talking to, DMA or, any of those types of organizations where email's at the core, of course I'm going to hear that, but I'm talking to other companies, and email is an effective tool even today with all of the other things. What do you think? Why do you think that is?
Again, another great question. I think because you're exactly right. Email is an immensely effective tool, and the proof that it is that here we are. Email, it isn't quite as old as we are, but email's 42 years old, depending on how you want to look at it. That first marketing email, in theory, went out about 1978. And so wow. It is, which is crazy when you think of it as a digital marketing channel, that we don't think of digital marketing existing for that long, but that's accurate. And the reason it's still around is because it works. And I think it's that combination of being extremely engaging, that it gives marketers the opportunity to connect with an audience with a little bit of a longer message. It can be short, obviously, but you've got the opportunity to have a little bit more of a longer conversation with your audience. And then you add in just the, the ease of use and the fact that I think for maybe our generation, it feels a little bit like a letter, and we were sort of used to that, so I think it was adopted easily. But you for the last, I mean, almost forever, at least long as I've been in the industry, we've heard various pundits and forecasters say, oh, email's dead or email's dying, and in 10 years it's going to be gone. And yet you look at all the statistics, and hey, the millennials use email every bit as much as the Gen Xers do, and it's because it's a great marketing vehicle and just a great communication tool. And so while, yeah, we have chat and we have social and we have all kinds of other, really oftentimes, powerful and useful methods of communicating, email just keeps chugging along. And again, from a marketing standpoint, if it didn't work, we wouldn't keep using it. But it does, and the ROI, you keep seeing things like, I was looking at a stat just yesterday, and they're saying that, the ROI is about 4,400%. You get about $44 for every dollar you spend, and it's going to vary from one company to the next. But when you average it all out, you just get a massive return on investment for building an effective email program. And whether that's building your own in-house list or building a partner program where you're leveraging, again, mailers who will, market on your behalf. But I think it's familiar at this point, and maybe it's not as new and sexy as something like TikTok, or the latest social platform, or Snapchat when that came out. But
look at us old people trying to throw around terms that we barely know.
I know, yeah. I said
TikTok last night,
here you go. I make it look like I know what's going on because I mentioned TikTok. But yeah, it does seem like there's a new channel that pops up, seemingly, every day, every month, that there's something new for us to play with. And as much as I love that, I enjoy getting into a new channel and finding, there's new ways for me to engage with an audience and drive response. But yet you never get rid of email because that's going to work. You do that right, that just keeps working. So
yeah, I'm an addict. I mean, I know when I'm subscribing to that list, all I'm doing is bringing yet another thing I'm going to have to look at when I wake up in the morning. But I just can't stop. I mean, it's just how it is. I want to get back to something you had said and kind of glassed over, and I know that you didn't intentionally glass over it for the purpose of like not wanting to talk about it, but it is the core, especially from a compliance standpoint of this industry. I was talking to Steve Rafferty over dinner when those things used to happen, and we were talking about TCPA. And TCPA is so fluid. Every day we wake up, there's some sort of ruling in court that contradicts a ruling from another circuit or whatever. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of movement and a lot of uncertainty with TCPA. But he said to me, he said something that was really interesting. He said, Rob, TCPA is kind of in the state that I believe CAN-SPAM was back in the early day. I was doing marketing. I was doing email marketing back when people would send you 100,000 names, and who knows how they got those things, right? And we just blasted them, and you just didn't look back. And then come along, this regulation of CAN-SPAM compliance, and it turned the industry upside down. Everybody was in an uproar, and for some reason, we were able to get through it. We were able to evolve it. We were able to adapt it and just accept it. And now it is just part of email marketing. Is that an accurate way to think about it?
I think so. Like any, sweeping regulatory change. And I always like to say, Rob, I know we talked about this too. Neither of us are lawyers, and but we will talk about legal topics.
I play one every day.
Exactly, that's right. So, my caveat is always like, God, please don't take anything I say as legal advice, because it sure isn't, but we do have some, some expertise and knowledge as at least, intelligent amateurs in that space, because we have to deal with it. So, yeah, I think, anytime a large, regulation comes into play like that, there's clearly going to be upheaval in an industry. And I think TCPA seems to be very much in that arena right now, and GDPR and a lot of the privacy legislation that's either in process or has come out in the last 2 years or so, clearly having a big impact on the industry, and an impact that continues to evolve because they really need case law to kind of determine, okay, how are we enforcing this? How does it apply to different situations? again, TCPA is such a, a great example because it's been around for quite a while, but it was about, phone calls. It was about telemarketing. And it's only relatively recently in the grand scheme of things that it's been applied to SMS and text messaging. But it certainly is. But that's a new arena that it wasn't designed for specifically. So there are a lot of logistical and semantic kind of conversations to have about, what is an auto dialer when it comes to SMS, and those kind of things. But going back to email, yeah, I think, it's CAN-SPAM was I think, a foundation for why we still have effective email today in a lot of ways. Because as you said, it was the Wild West before CAN-SPAM. Spam was certainly a prevalent part of everybody's daily email life, and it continues to be, but it set some guide rails. And the biggest of those being that opt-out process, where it said, okay, you as a marketer are able to send an unsolicited marketing message to Rob, to Tom, if you've got their email address. That's okay, but you can't keep doing it once they say stop it. And you got to give them an easy way to say stop it. And by putting in those guidelines, it's, I think, in a lot of ways legitimized the email process. And while certainly upheaval, no question, I guarantee folks who were, really intensely mailing back then, and I know many of them, it changed the way they did business. But I also talked to a lot of them who, they're not at all unhappy about CAN-SPAM. And I think if you ask them now, even if, what they thought about then, you'd have to go back and talk to them and go back in time, and I don't know if you can do that. But I think a lot of them will tell you now, it's like, no, CAN-SPAM is great. It's actually, because it gives us rules, but they're rules we understand how to follow. And, in the grand scheme of things, they're not complicated rules. You can, again, get down into the real specifics in CAN-SPAM, and there are, multiple, layers to it, but at its, most primary level, it's really about giving people the option to unsubscribe and then honoring those unsubscribe requests. And if you do that, and then you follow just general marketing rules of not being deceptive and staying in accordance with, typical guidelines around, marketing fairly, you can use email and, to your heart's content and do it so effectively. So I think it's really a case where getting an effective law in place here in the United States is what, I would say, it cleaned up the space, but it, I think it did to some extent, again, put some rules in place that marketers could easily follow and yet still use the medium to really drive effective results for, their brand or their clients. And that's really why I think email has been as effective as it is. And it's an odd case maybe to say that, regulation is actually a foundation for why a channel is successful, but I think that's a good case in email. And I think it'll be really interesting to see if that does end up being the case with something like TCPA and SMS.
Has there been any revision? I mean, and maybe you don't know. I know it's an unfair question because I didn't pitch it to you earlier, but has there been any kind of revision to CAN-SPAM in any recent years?
Yeah, no, they do look at it every handful of years, and I don't know the exact number, but actually, when CAN-SPAM first came out, the penalty was I believe $60,000 per email if somebody was found in violation, and that has been updated just recently to basically about $43,000 now per offending email. You can look at that as inflation, since 2003.
It went from what did you say, 1,000 to 43,000?
Actually 16,000. So,
16,
so yeah, it's still a pretty big increase, but it's not quite that.
Look, I don't mind just throwing numbers. I do it all the time. I'm just like,
exactly.
As long as we know we went from here to here.
But I think it's actually it's really interesting that when they did look at CAN-SPAM again, and they decided, okay, we're going to up the penalty to be more in line with what the value of a dollar is now. But they looked at the rest of the law and said, yeah, but everything else seems good. It didn't need any substantive changes. And again, that's fantastic. As marketers, it means the penalty for holding is now 15 yards instead of 10 yards. But we're still playing on the same field by the same rules in general when we play this game of email football.
Forgive me, when we first started this, we talked a little bit, and so we're right at the bottom of our hour. I don't know how your time is. If you have
I'm
a few
good.
minutes to,
I can
good. That's awesome. I'm really enjoying listening to this. Um, I I have a question. You talked about, and I do want to get into SMS a bit, and some of the newer things that Optizmo is doing. But are you both international markets or domestic or both? I don't. You didn't say earlier.
Yep, yeah, we have the majority of our clients are US based, but no, we have many international clients, both on the email and SMS side, and that's certainly an area of our business that's growing. It's again the fortunately the value prop that we bring to the table is useful for folks whether they're strictly complying with CAN spam or they need to comply with different email regulations around the world.
Yeah, because I mean, if I understand it in a very, very 50,000-foot level, the US is opt out,
Right.
most of the rest of the world is opt in.
Yep, that is a good way of looking at it. There are a handful of countries that are on the opt-out basis, but most are opt-in. And so in that case, the unsolicited email is at least as far as we're concerned, is a no-go from the start in those countries. But you still need to provide the ability to opt out, and you can still with any number of international clients that again that work with us that still employ affiliate programs and still employ the email channel. It's just that they know that in all of those email lists should be opt-in to begin with, but you still have to follow the opt-out process. And again, you still face those same challenges from a complexity standpoint of just managing that, managing your suppression files across a large group of mailing partners. So that challenge doesn't change whether it's an opt-in or opt-out environment in that sense.
Is the customer mix at Optizmo, is it anywhere from those huge affiliates pushing, hundreds of thousands of records at a time to if I had a 3,000, count list, email list, is that something that you guys are, is that a sweet spot, not a sweet spot? I mean, I'm just trying to get a mix for what Optizmo really is good for and who the perfect client is.
Yep. Yeah. We typically, we don't have a perfect client because we're vertical agnostic. Obviously, it doesn't, whether an offer being emailed is, an auto insurance lead or education or dating or travel, which, it could be anything. As long as you're employing email and you're using it in this manner, you're going to need a solution for managing those opt-outs and distributing those files. So we're vertical agnostic, and really size of company, we work with everybody from small mom and pop advertisers who are, just trying to get a business up and running and are trying to drive traffic to a website or trying to, generate leads, and they're using affiliates to do that, all the way up to any number of, Fortune 500, Fortune 100 brands that all of us are immensely familiar with and have massive affiliate programs that they're managing. And everybody in between. So yeah, it's when we talk about a perfect client, it's really focused on just how they're leveraging email within their marketing programs.
Are there any verticals right now that are there any verticals that you see or your metrics are showing that are really winning? Like, so for example, does mortgage really take advantage of the consumer's ability to respond effectively via email? I mean, I know you said you're vertical agnostic, but are there some that are winning over others?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that interestingly we have a very unique insight into email activity, because again we're focused primarily and almost entirely on the unsubscribe process. So we're connected to, but also distant from the actual send process in the evaluation of performance, for example. So we see, we know that emails are being sent, obviously, and those emails include opt-out links that run through our system and lead to pages that we host and manage. But we get to see the activity at the end. So it's all those people who've said, I don't really want to receive these emails anymore. I'm going to click on that unsubscribe link. It's kind of fascinating because it gives us insight into a side of performance metrics that I think a lot of marketers tend to, if not ignore, they minimize it in some ways, because as marketers, we want to focus on the positive. It's, it's about what's my response rate, what's my ROI, how many, sales am I generating, how many leads, that positive goal, my KPIs, those are the things that I want to look at. And, I talk to a lot of marketers who, when it comes to the unsubscribes, the opt-outs, they're like, well, I don't like those. I prefer people don't opt out. But when they do, I just want to get them opted out, as efficiently and quickly as possible and kind of move forward. And they're missing a big piece of customer feedback, which is these people who are sending what we call negative marketing signals through either, flagging an email as spam, again, opting out being sort of the main one of those, and even things just like not engaging in your, in your campaigns, which is, at the end of the day, usually most people who receive an email don't engage with it. They don't open it. So the vast majority of marketing signals or performance metrics that we're actually getting as email marketers are, in a sense, negative, but we don't look at those typically. And there's a lot of learnings that can come from that by, it's just the same thing that you would do on a, on a performance side to optimize a campaign is like, how do I find more people who will respond to this? Opposite question is, how can I either better engage with the people that aren't responding? What can I figure? What commonalities do they have? Maybe I can obviously see that my message is, for whatever reason, not connecting with an audience. And maybe that's, if I can see a specific trend in the segments of people who are opting out, those are great learnings. And they're great ways to decide, maybe that's an audience I don't want to talk to, or maybe I just need to come up with better messaging to them. So there's all kinds of information that we have access to that we provide a couple of infographics every year on, which I think are really instructive. But to get back to your actual question, and I circle all around, we don't actually know. Yes,
I was like, God, I hope he didn't answer it, because I'm not sure that I remember what he said about it.
This is me as the marketer talking around the question, and eventually coming back to it. And that's the key to to proper marketing and storytelling.
Storytelling, brother, storytelling. I got it right.
But yeah, so we don't necessarily know which verticals are performing well at this point. I can tell you, because again, our focus is on that end result of an opt-out standpoint, as opposed to the end result of a conversion and a sale. But what I can see anecdotally, and none of this is particularly surprising, is we know which of our advertisers are more active right now, and certainly some verticals are going gangbusters. With obviously the situation we're in, all working from home, the pandemic. There are a lot of huge impacts on business and the economy right now, let alone public health and everything else. But we're seeing certainly verticals like travel, it's much more challenging right now, because for a time you couldn't travel. That being said, I think we also see that, and this is just from my own looking at emails that are hitting my inbox, I've also seen some really clever marketing coming from certain travel focused companies, where they recognize, hey, we can't get you to book a trip right now, but we know that we're going to be able to down the road. We don't know when that is. How can we maintain the conversation with you and keep you interested in our brand, so that when the time comes that I can get you to convert on something again, you still remember us, you still have a mindset to do that. So we're definitely still seeing activity in a lot of those places. It's just folks that are looking at thinking outside the box and long-term potentially in some cases. But certainly there are segments of the economy that are getting hit harder than others. And it is one of those things that focus companies that are really focused on digital and don't require brick and mortar real world situations are able to often weather this storm, I think, more effectively, because we know digital marketing, you look at just the activity on digital marketing, it is way up in a lot of different channels.
For sure. Yeah, we have a lot of members that are reporting, record months and or just overwhelmed with work, our business. And so certainly, and I'm not trying to make, or underestimate or understate the rest of the world and what's going on with it, but in the world of performance marketing and online marketing, it seems to be a time where a lot of companies are taking advantage of the consumer staying at home and shopping online.
Yeah, I think I just saw a stat in an article earlier this week that email open rates from January to, and I think they were probably looking at May, we're up 20%. Whereas again, people are, they're at home more, they're in front of their computer more, and so they're engaging with more marketing and more communications from companies.
Yeah, even at the council, we've toyed around with what day to send a newsletter, what day to send this reminder or whatever. And what I can tell you is that every day is working right now. And so it's amazing to me. I can send it on Saturday or Sunday and I'm getting a good open rate. And so
I think half the time people don't know what day it is anymore. I know people like
I only know because I have to send my newsletter on Sunday. So I remember Sundays for sure. Tom, also, and I don't want to cut this short because I've taken a lot of your time, but I do want to just briefly touch on the future of Optizmo, and you've mentioned it a couple of times, and we just bridged it a little bit, but SMS, you guys are getting into other things, right? And not just email, is that correct?
Yeah, I think what we found is from an SMS standpoint, we started having clients really a few years ago bring up the question of, hey, can we use you guys, your platform, to store phone numbers as opposed to email addresses? And our developers were like, well, yeah, we can make that happen. That's from a developer standpoint, which I'm not, apparently that's relatively easy. So we started having clients that began to use us in different fashions to house suppression files that would be used for text messaging purposes. It's again a little bit of a different use case, but it's an aspect of our business and the industry that's growing. Certainly, it seems like for the last 2 years, every event that I go to, SMS has become more and more of a hot topic in the affiliate space and in the performance marketing space. So it just makes sense that we're going to see more clients leverage our platform for that technology, for that marketing channel. So we're continuing to build out our capabilities there because, of course, we're finding it is different than email. The unsubscribe process is different. The way the files are used and the partners that are using them vary. So we want to make sure that as much as possible we're adapting to the needs of our clients in those areas. So that's definitely a growth area for the company. And in addition to that, both in email and SMS, we're really focused on some of the insights, as I mentioned, looking at the data and realizing that we've got a wealth of information that our clients can make use of for their own optimization purposes, and just making that more easily accessible, from a data analytics standpoint, and providing it in a way that's easier to consume and use in optimization. So that's also something that we're diligently, and when I say we, I mean our developers are diligently working on. It'll come to me when I get to talk about, explain it and market it to our clients, work on the messaging, but they do all the heavy lifting. But those are just
all teamwork, Tom.
But in addition to those, we are certainly looking at different ways that we can provide support and tools for mailers, for basically everybody in the ecosystem that that we work with, we touch on in some way or another, that touch our platform, and just trying to make that experience more user friendly and valuable for them. So we've got a great group of developers, and I've actually got a call this afternoon where we'll talk about a couple of interesting product initiatives that would open up some intriguing opportunities for us. So yeah, it's we've got no shortage of cool ideas and interesting enhancements coming down the road, which in a realm that doesn't necessarily sound as exciting as email suppression list management, it's still pretty exciting. We have a lot of cool things on the
I can't even repeat what you just said. So it's super exciting. It's 4 words in a row.
There you go.
It sounds like things at Optizmo are on fire right now, and you guys are taking advantage of a lot of things and doing some great things, and with great people, which is what you talked about from minute one. Before we wrap this up, is there anything that maybe I missed out with Optizmo that you want to say, or yourself that you've done that I do know this? You're a fitness nut, right? You like fitness. Is that much like myself? I
could tell that immediately.
That is definitely a joke, people. But you have your Optizmo shirt on now representing, but exactly. I mean, when you first sat down, you had some sort of like, I love fitness. I wear those shirts also, but they look different on me.
Yeah.
You're into fitness, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I think, Rob, it's one of those things, as we get older, it gets harder and harder to stay in shape, and it is a constant battle.
I
But
don't know what you're talking about.
I know, no, I was just, it comes easy to some of us. But yeah, I am a bit of a fitness nut. Anybody who's met me in person and and talked to me at shows probably would recognize that. It's probably pretty obvious, and it certainly comes out when I chat with folks.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just been I think a core facet of my own sort of personality and personal growth, at least since I was in my 30s when I started to take it more seriously. Decided, this getting older thing, not really, not down with that. I just like to, can I just stop? I thought like mid 30s was great. Maybe if I could just stay there. So I think it's all really just in a fruitless attempt to not go, not get old and stop aging in my 30s. We'll see.
I'm embracing it, Tom. I'm not fighting it. I'm embracing it. They're letting me into the grocery store an hour early now. So
Well, part of it is, Rob, we work in, the performance marketing and affiliate marketing space is still at such a young industry. And I know it's funny, when I got into it, the first, pure affiliate marketing company that I went to work for back in, I think, 2006, they confided in me after they hired me. They're like, well, one of the reasons we really liked you is we thought this place could use a little adult supervision. And I'm like, I'm in my 30s and I'm the adult in the room now.
trust me,
That old.
trust me. I feel that almost everywhere I go now. I'm like, no, I don't have grandchildren, but they do call me grandpa.
Oh,
Well,
God.
look, Tom, I've really enjoyed this. I mean, this is really, a second hit for us. We did this about a week ago, and just, we were just talking, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. That's why I wanted to invite you to not only talk about what you have done in the past and who you are, but I found Optizmo really interesting and exciting. Surviving and thriving in a world right now that's surrounded by a lot of other high tech AI driven, type, companies. And so the fact that, email still chugging along and doing really, really well, I found that really interesting. And actually, I found it very comfortable for me to know it, because I really cling to things lately, just so that I don't feel like the world's coming to a halt. And so, appreciate what you guys are doing. I appreciate what you're doing. Is there anything else before we sign off here?
No, I think, this has been great. Really, a fun conversation. Of course, as you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about Optizmo, and I'm always happy to, talk about the company, and which, I can't say about every company I've worked with in the past. So I'm sure you can relate, when you work for a place that you really enjoy. Yeah, no, of course not. When you work with a great group of folks, and, doing good work, in a sense, and that you enjoy working together, it is a pleasure to come on and have these kind of conversations and chat about it. So yeah, you'll never get me short on talking about good things about the company that I work for.
Two marketers talking together. What could be longer?
Right, exactly.
Well, Tom, look, thank you again. I really appreciate the time. This has been a blast. How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, you can find me, my email address, real easy. It's just Tom@Optizmo. And that's, they'll see it, I'm sure, in the description, but optizmo.com, and website optizmo.com, and find me at Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, the usual places. Most of the time I've been on most of those platforms long enough that I am actually me. I'm at Tom Wozniak, which I guess is worth something on Twitter and on Facebook, but you can find me on all those spots.
I don't know. There's a buyer for all that, Tom, but I do, I do appreciate the fact that, we are where we are in life, and you're just rocking out there, still connected. So, Tom, thank you again. It's been a blast. Everybody, the council is doing what they can to promote the industry. We're doing a lot of things to help bring benefits, especially in this time. It's been crazy out there, and we're doing what we can. We have weekly webinar series that we're doing every Thursday at 3 o'clock Eastern. Those things are easy to find. Just go over to leadscouncil.org into our events hub page. You can find that and the recording links to these and other on-air webinars. Tom, once again, thank you very much. This was a blast.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob.